How many of you have noticed the drastic increase in the death toll of African American community? If the answer is yes, then you're noticing the reality of what's happening here on American soil, and that we're entering what's so-called a post-racial era. So the three main factors I'm going to be talking about today is the definition of racial profiling, and the definition, and along with an example, pros and cons within the community and pros and cons within the political figures of 2016 election. First, the definition of racial profiling is that it's a long-lasting and deeply troubling national problem from small towns to big cities, and equally distributing the attention and discrimination towards every subgroups, maybe even a little bit more on certain ones. An example for this that ties back to what happened in New York is the three main subgroups are Arabic, Muslim, and Southern Asians, referring to the Muslim Asians, and how the tragic event of 9/11 or September 11, 2001, and what happened there, racial profiling is being afflicted towards them no matter what they do, whether they're getting into a cab or boarding an airplane, because the same color of their skin, or maybe just the mere fact of presuming that they're up to no good. It's one thing to state the facts, but it's another thing to state the reality of what's happening here in the communities and their opinions. So next I'll be talking about the pros and cons within the community. Pros being that it minimizes the crime rate, minimizes the chances of a terrorist attack, and it's reasonable. Reasonable being that you're not gonna presume that everybody's the same as you. You have to acknowledge that there's good people and there's bad people, but we can't judge by the color of the book. And that every time you go to like a part of town where it's just like really known to be corrupt or maybe even extraordinarily different in terms of heritage, or maybe even religion, or maybe even the example of national origins, you have to presume and acknowledge that they come from a different background compared to you where you grew up, and that you have to better yourself for the worst because you never know what happens. And for the con is being that it's an act of discrimination. It's not really successful at times for presuming that you can't just base your findings on some certain ethnic background because, oh, I presume he did because he comes from this background. And the last con is referring to how it keeps people uncomfortable, whether it's the cops or the minorities. And it gets like a vice versa type of limbo effect, whether it's either they're at them or they're at the other person. So now we focus the community. Now it's to another end of the political figures of the 2016 election, and the pros and cons of what they did and their opinions towards what the topic of racial profiling. So racial profiling, to them, the pro side of the argument is Donald Trump, who was interviewed by Christy Sanders, who was a reporter on December 6, 2015. She was interviewing him, who was a reporter. He put a lot of emphasis on referring to how racial profiling is not other than just a tool. It's a way of life, like he said. He's saying that we need to not hesitate and be not foolish of what our decision towards discriminating one person so we can save other people. It's beneficial towards the American people, as he states. Compared to the con side, how Hillary Clinton, who was interviewed by her own website back in December 6, 2016, and she was saying that no matter the circumstance, when she becomes president, she wants to eliminate and ban all racial profiling and assign every body cam throughout the whole nation for police officers, whether they're on shift or whether they're on off duty, so the protection of them and for the protection of the minorities. The category for con is Gary Johnson, who was interviewed by Elijah Migosky. I think that's how you pronounce it. And she's a talk show host who interviewed him on April 25th, 2012. And he was saying that 70,000 people who are Muslim or anybody related to being Arabic or Southern Asian, as I said before, particularly the Muslim Indians, how they're being discriminated for the mere fact of what happened in September 11. in New York, and that every war they fought facing those people, it's like they're putting two and two together, and it's creating this reality where justice is not being done to them, and civil rights for them is being thrown out the window for them. And then the last con is for Jill Stein. Jill Stein, who was interviewed by Yana Kirchhoff, the candidate organization chief, and she was interviewed on August 7th, 2012, and she was referred to stating the same things, well, close to the same things as Gary Johnson, who relatively is the same thing for New York, and how something needs to be done, and something's getting out of hand for the minorities who come from the backgrounds of being Arabic or Muslim or Indian Muslim. But in the end, we need to acknowledge that racial profiling is just not the end of it. There's never going to be an end. Everybody has judgment, and it's part of human nature. But we need to accept the pros and cons of what happens. And as humans, we can develop